Welcome to Wild Development Studio. Join us as we venture into the breathtaking realm of wildlife arts and untamed adventures. With captivating stories from the field and ideas to dive into the visual arts, we'll ignite your passion for conservation. Get ready to develop something wild.
Welcome to Wild Developments. You're in the right place if you want a heartfelt connection with nature through the visual arts and storytelling. Today we have author, adventurer, photographer, and historian Jeffrey Ryan on the show. His debut book, Appalachian Odyssey, a 28-year hike on America's Trail, was hailed by the former executive editor of National Geographic as a classic of nature and travel writing. This set off a national tour in a 1985 VW camper, a vehicle he still tours in and uses as his wandering base camp. His newest book, This Land Was Saved for You and Me, is about a combination of well-known and many more lesser-known advocates that made the protection of America's public lands possible. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to talk about a subject so near and dear to both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so right off the bat, you've walked 8,000 miles. I have to ask what that is like.
It's a privilege. I always say it's a privilege to still be able to be doing trail hiking at this age, and it's just so good for my soul that I have to go out and do it periodically.
What has been your favorite experience while you're out hiking?
Oh my gosh. I think what's neat about hiking for me is it's a great mix of camaraderie and being by yourself and being comfortable in your own skin and discovering what's around the next bend, which sometimes you do together, and sometimes you do it because you're walking alone, even though you're with your partner, who may be up to 20 minutes ahead of or behind you. So I just think it's really neat to get up in the morning and have nature as your canvas, if you will, and whatever happens during the day kind of plays out ahead of you. And it's a wonderful thing that we don't often make a priority. We often get caught up in day-to-day appointments and things that we have to do and other obligations. And just to be able to break the tent down and start walking and see what the day holds ahead of you is just a marvelous experience.
That's beautiful. What inspired you the very first time to start hiking the Appalachian Trail?
Well, that's a funny story. So I got involved in hiking the Appalachian Trail because I'd already spent 6 months on a Mexico to Canada hike when I was 25. And that's a whole story in and of itself. But when I got back from that, I had had a 6.5 month leave of absence from my job to do it. And I got back and still obviously had the hiking bug, but was unable to take another 6 months off, given my situation then. So I started hiking with a friend of mine, a newly found friend of mine, and we started doing weekend hikes together. And one of the things we started doing was the Long Trail in Vermont, half of which is the Appalachian Trail. And so we were on one of our sojourns over there, and one night in the tent, my friend Wayne said to me, "You do realize we're hiking the Appalachian Trail?" And I burst out laughing and said, "You got to be kidding, man. It would take us 30 years at this rate." And he said, "So what?" And I thought that was really one of the most profound things that has ever been said to me. So what indeed? So we started doing a section every year, and 28 years later, we rounded a bend and finished the trail.
That's amazing. So okay, for instance, for me, like if you're out in public, sometimes people aren't always very nice. Do you find that when you're out on the trail that people act with each other a little bit differently?
Yeah, I think I think one of the reasons why the trail community is so tight is that most of the people who are out there have a sense of purpose, and they're out there for the same reasons, to enjoy nature. And I'll tell you a funny story about that. So we were in part of Pennsylvania on the Pinnacle, it's called, on Hawk Mountain. It's right adjacent to a hawk sanctuary where people come to view hawks and other birds on the flyway. And we were up there around dusk, and a number of people showed up and came and went while we were up there during the afternoon and evening. And it was just so cool that everyone was coming up and sitting, perching, finding their own perch on the rocks and watching for a while. And every once in a while, one of us would turn and acknowledge to the other that what an awesome experience up here. And it really sort of drove home the fact that some people are out for days on end and some people are out for an afternoon. It doesn't really matter. There's a sort of communal feeling about the reason why we climb mountains, to look at the view, right? So that was a really profound experience and sort of emblematic of why people do sections of the trail. I think last I knew, something like 3 million people a year hike at least 1 mile on the Appalachian Trail. So it's a public attribute. It's something that we can all enjoy, whether it's a couple hours or 6.5 months.
So over the course of, you've been doing it on and off for about 28 years, would you say that the quality of the trails has improved or declined?
Uh, a little of both. So one of the issues right now with the trail is that it has become so popular that, in particular in the spring, the south to north bounders, which is about 80% of the people go that direction. The first few months, March, April in particular, there's basically a horde of people starting out, and there's about a 75% attrition rate. So the beginning of the trail sees a lot of use. And what the Appalachian Mountain Club is really trying, Appalachian Trail Conservancy as well, is trying to do is get people to look at what they call flip-flopping, starting at different sections and trying to sort of tailor your trip accordingly. It makes the hike a lot better, not just from a use perspective, but just having a more wilderness experience.
Would somebody that wants to start hiking the AT, what are some other things other than flip-flopping that they can do to help preserve our trails?
Keep the group sizes to 10 or less, to try to mitigate erosion and noise, and also just give people space. It can get crowded on some of the spots. Carry in, carry out, as always. People leaving trash at lean-tos and other communal areas is an endemic problem. But just respect for others and respect for nature are really the fundamental takeaways. We're all out there to enjoy it. And, the old saying, take only pictures, leave only footprints, really comes home.
Mhm. There's been a lot, at least that I'm seeing on social media, where people are kind of getting bold with animals and getting a little too close. Have you ever had any close encounters with an animal?
Well, it's funny, out west on the Pacific Crest Trail, there were several rattlesnake sightings along the way. So, but they usually give you a fair warning. And in fact, in every case, so you can either backtrack or give wide berth. And on the trail, Appalachian Trail, really, there are two areas, actually 3 areas, that are really bear centric. One is Shenandoah Valley, Shenandoah National Park. Another one is up in New Jersey, believe it or not, in Delaware Water Gap area, and the third is down in Georgia. Those are really at the terminus or the beginning of the trail, whichever way you're starting. Um, and for us, we never had a bear sighting until 2 days left of our whole trip. We were going north to south to end at Springer Mountain in Georgia because we had inadvertently started this whole adventure on Katahdin in Maine, the northern terminus. And Wayne and I had stopped to have a snack, a trail bar, and we were getting started up again. And I heard this commotion, and a big black blob dropped out of a tree, and it was a mother bear.
Oh.
And she actually ran between the two of us and went down the mountain, and then turned around and started whimpering, grunting, and her three cubs were up in the tree that she had dropped out of, and she was encouraging them to come down, two of which went pretty willingly, and the other one didn't want to drop out of the tree and protested for quite a while. And we were just frozen. We didn't, it could have gone either way. And fortunately, the little one finally dropped out of the tree, ran down to mama, and they all ran down the mountain. And that was it, really. That was the only substantial sighting that we saw.
That's incredible. I love bears. We go to Cades Cove quite often. We got to see 3 little baby bears and a mom in a tree. And of course, all the park rangers are around, like trying to keep everybody at a safe distance. But yeah, you don't want to get in between a mama bear and their cubs.
Yeah, no. And it was an amazing experience. The funny part was, of course, I had my phone in my holster, my side pocket, and it had been probably 20 minutes before that. I powered it down because I was worried about losing battery life.
Yeah.
So here I am trying to get the phone to boot up again, and all the actions occurring right in front of me, and I couldn't do anything. It was before GoPros and all that. So anyway, I have a vivid memory of it, fortunately.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, when you are packing for a long distance hike like that, how do you begin to prepare?
Oh gosh. Well, preparing now is a lot different than it was when it first started out in 1983 when we did the Pacific Crest Trail. I was drying food at home in a oven, and eventually a commercial food dehydrator, because food was so hard to come by other than very prepared stuff that weighed a ton. So everything kind of evolved. The gear has gone ultra light, which it wasn't when we first started. And the technology has changed so much. Of course, we didn't have cell phones when we started. We just walk out the door and say, see you in 2.5 weeks to our loved ones. And that was it. And, cell phones came along, and of course, the quality of the footage now is so much better. Everyone has at their disposal a GoPro or something similar. And it's really a video-centric world now that way. But, there are other challenges, like how do you charge your phone when you're out there, and et cetera, et cetera. So there are trade-offs. And the one thing that we've kept fairly consistently, and we joke about it, is we're carrying the same tent we started using in 1995. And you can almost see through it at this point, but it's such a nostalgic piece of equipment that we're going to see it through.
Wow, you certainly got your use out of it then.
Yeah.
They don't make them like that anymore.
No, they weigh a ton. It weighs a ton, which is funny because we could get much cushier accommodations at half the weight, but the Pleasure Dome is still going strong.
So would you say that's your favorite piece of equipment, or do you have something else that's like your favorite?
That is right up there. My top 2, probably top 3, are my leather hiking boots because of the support they give, And we have this thing called a thermal lounger. They don't even make them anymore, but you put a ground pad in it, this particular model, and it turns into like a beach chair with a side adjustment straps. And having slept through many storms on leaning on one elbow or the other, I just decided to do the upgrade, and it's changed everything. You can sit up comfortably and write in your journal, and just get up in the morning and drink your coffees in a comfortable seat. Makes all the difference.
It really does. How do you charge your cell phone?
That has evolved. At the beginning, the solar panels were fairly large that you had to put on. Now they're fairly small, and I always bring one of those little bricks that will charge your phone or your iPad or whatever many times over before it needs a recharge. And as a added piece of safety equipment now is I have a satellite driven piece of equipment. It's probably, I don't know, 3 inches by 4 inches by 3 inches, and it's a little signaling device that feeds off the satellite. So wherever you are in the world, even if there's no cell phone coverage, you can get a message out.
That's important.
So you can pre-program up to 10 messages in it and just say, hey, made it to camp okay, or everything's going well, or whatever. And you can reach out to people literally all over the world and tell them you're okay.
That's incredible. Now, hiking with the same friend for over 28 years, is that a learning curve? Do you guys get to the point now where you're like, well, I'm going to pack extra socks because I know, is it Wayne?
Yeah.
He's going to forget something, or, you guys look out for each other?
He doesn't forget anything I do. It's an amazing relationship. He's an introvert and an analyst, and I'm an extrovert and a go with the flow guy. And so between the two of us, we kind of cover all the bases. But when we first started, I wondered if, and probably he did too, if this was going to work. We were so polar opposite, and now we're on the same page and know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it goes really well. It's so funny when we plan a trip now, because it's I'm bringing this for food, you're bringing that for food, and we'll swing by the supermarket and fill up what we need to fill in the rest of it on the way. The last trip we did in Georgia, we had done the pre-shopping, and on the drive down, we sort of hashed through what we needed, and we literally stopped got off the highway, and we're done shopping for our trip in 12 minutes.
Wow.
For a 2-week trip, food items. We had it so well down, and it was you go to the oatmeal aisle, I'll go to the pasta aisle, and we'll meet at the end.
At this point,
it
you
was
guys are
pretty funny.
well-oiled machine. I can't even do that now for like a couple of days.
Yeah, and the tent goes up in under 5 minutes, which is pretty cool when a rainstorm's coming, or it's raining already. We can be set up and in the tent in under 5 minutes, which is pretty cool.
That's impressive. Do you have any tips for getting along with someone? I mean, you guys are, well, do you guys kind of separate out and?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's really interesting doing a trip like that, because the only other sport I can equate it with is kayaking, where you're sort of on the same river, but you're doing two different personal approaches. You can take different sides of the river or whatever. Similar to hiking. I mean, you're on the same path, but you have days where you feel better than others, so your pace is different. And the way we roll is we just, in the morning, we go over the guidebook, kind of look at the lay of the trail up ahead, and discuss possible points to stop and catch up, and scenic viewpoints or water sources or whatever it may be. And I'm usually ahead of him, and I have an innate sense of when I'm about a mile ahead of him. If I get out too far on my leash, I just slow down or I find a viewpoint and wait for him. And then we reconnect and have some water or fill up our water bottles and hang out for a little bit and then get going again. So it's pretty neat in that you can have space when you need it, and you can have camaraderie when you need it. And it's really kind of a cool way to do it. If you're in a car together traveling across the country, you can't really like get out
Yeah,
or
just
find your own space or the radio's
take
on
a
or
sleep.
whatever. Right.
Unless you're
And
driving.
that's the other thing is it reminds me of is I think the one of the greatest things about being out there for me is just being away from noise and being away from the constant noise of backup beepers, leaf blowers, office noise, background music, um, ads at the gas pumps, you name it. And I don't think most people appreciate how much or recognize how much of that background noise is occurring. Um, but boy, it really feeds my soul to be away from it. And it slows me down to a pace that is much more comfortable and healthy, I think, than running around with our heads cut off most of the time.
Right. That's what I was going to ask next was about mental well-being, and you just covered it. What about for physical well-being? Do you do anything to make sure that you're in hiking ready shape or?
Yeah, I usually try to walk at least an hour a day. Sometimes I don't quite hit it, but that's my general goal is to do that. And just walking, and when I see a hill, trying to go up a little faster than a normal pace, just so I'm in trail ready shape when I go. Um, it's it's important to be moving all the time, even when you're not on the trail, particularly as you get older, the ability to jump out. It's a challenge. I think everyone, kids included, are so attached to looking at their phones, even when we're walking around. Um, I have become aware of an organization that's doing a really cool thing in Maine, where I live. It's called Teens to Trails, and its goal is to set up an outdoor club in every high school in the state. And there's gear provided by various gear vendors, or people donate used equipment so that kids can get out year round. So it's hiking, it's kayaking, it's snowshoeing, whatever it may be, skiing, and they're having enormous success getting kids to at least take part in outdoor adventures on a regular basis. They provide training and mentorship to uh, advisors within the school, teachers that want to be the head of their particular club, and provide materials on getting them out. It's a wonderful organization, and I'd love to see more of that.
That's wonderful. Just having that access alone. I mean, the phone's so accessible. So if they have access to that kind of stuff, there's no excuse. Get outside.
Right. The other thing I've seen going on at a lot of libraries now, I don't know about other states, but in rural Maine, a lot of the libraries are now doing things like you can check out snowshoes like you used to be able to check out a library book. So snowshoes, skis, various equipment, tents, that kind of thing. So there's no barrier to getting out and having the equipment to do it. It's a cool idea.
That really is. Especially as people are using more and more digital books. We got the space for stuff like equipment.
Right.
That's wonderful. Well, speaking of books, you're written 5 books. Can you tell us about your most recent one?
Yeah, I'll go back just a little bit to how I got to this one. Is um, I wrote my first book, Appalachian Odyssey, about the 28-year hike on the Appalachian Trail, and that got me interested in that writing that book, but also doing the trail. Really gave me an appreciation for, or an interest in, how the trail even came into being in the first place. So I started researching that, and that led to my second book called Blazing Ahead. And basically, in a nutshell, the story of the trail is the doer and the dreamer. The dreamer who came up with the idea, a guy named Benton Mackay, could never have pulled off building it if it weren't for the guy who actually rolled up his sleeves and built it, a guy named Myron Avery. And what was interesting about Mackay is that he sort of intersected a number of things that were happening in the conservation movement and became a leading figure in it. So the next logical step for me was to write a book called This Land Was Saved for You and Me. And it's about how Gifford Pinchot, Frederick Law Olmsted, and a band of foresters, including Benton Mackay, were responsible for the national forests and the wilderness areas in the United States. So that came out last fall, and it's a hardcover, and I'm particularly proud of it. It's a fun book.
That's amazing. What is it like to write a book? Like lots of research, lots of in your
Lots of
head?
walking.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way I go about it is I do a lot of research, and I keep researching until the point where I think, okay, I have enough. I've done enough grocery shopping now. It's time to make the meal, and that's the way I do it. Is I to make another analogy, I call it throwing clay on a wheel, like a potter. I just keep working the material until it starts. Got some nuts and bolts turning around right now in different directions on some other projects. So we'll see where that leads next.
Well, if people want to keep in touch and see what your next projects are, or dig into your books that you've already written, how can they find you?
They can find me on jeffryanauthor.com, JEFFRYAN author, AUTHOR.com.
Very good. And then before we go, what is one tip that you have for someone who would like to connect with nature?
Get out and do it every day. Even in an urban environment, there's no excuse for not going to a park, going for a walk. Make it a priority. I think everything, it's like going to the gym. We can have everything else get in the way and then say at the end of the day, I'll go tomorrow. But it doesn't work. I think it's much better to make it a priority and just go. Even if it's walking, down to a store to get your morning coffee. It's at least it's getting outside and enjoying the day and the sunrise or the wind in your face or whatever it may be. It's when you make it a priority, you feel better about yourself, and therefore you can give your best self to other people.
Absolutely. Don't you find like even if you don't want to go outside, that once you have, you feel so much better?
Yes, that's what rainwear's for.
Exactly. Have you heard the quote by Billy Connolly?
No.
Billy Connolly from Monty Python. He's like, there's no such thing as bad weather. Grab yourself a sexy raincoat and get outside.
Amen.
So thank you so much for your
Oh, you
time
bet.
and all your stories. Until next time, get outside and see what develops.
Thanks for joining Wild Development Studio. We hope this exploration into the world of wildlife arts and adventure has sparked a desire to get outside and connect with something wild. If you have an adventure that's awe-inspiring, don't hesitate to share. Click the link in the description to submit your story to have it featured on our show or be a guest. Until next time, keep connecting to the wild and see what develops. The views, opinions, and statements expressed by individuals during Wild Development Studio productions do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Wild Development Studio or its affiliates. Participation in any activities, expeditions, or adventures discussed or promoted during our content may involve inherent risks. It is strongly advised that individuals conduct thorough research, seek professional guidance, and take all necessary precautions before engaging in any such activities. Wild Development Studio, its representatives, or employees shall not be held responsible for any injury, loss, damage, accident, or unforeseen incident that may occur as a result of participating in activities inspired by or discussed in our content. By choosing to engage with our content or act upon any information provided, individuals do so at their own risk and discretion.